embarking on my media career down at BBC Wiltshire. But yeah, it was really, a wonderful first couple of years at the game, because being back somewhere that I knew so well, so many of the same people, watching a really attractive side that they had at the time under Mark Cooper as well, and it really helped me in that first year when. I know I've probably spoken about it a few times. It's very challenging coming out of football, and probably people look at me now and think, oh, he's commentating and doing his media stuff. It's been a walk in the park. Well, it wasn't. I can tell you that it was very, very challenging the first year or two. So, I'll always be thankful to people like Sean at the BBC. Um, Tom Matrepsky was probably the media officer at Swindon at the time. The people at Chelsea that have continued to give me work since I first retired. So, I won't forget that, because like I said, it was a tough year or two really. So Swindon played a big part in that, as they did obviously in my heady heights as a one-time goal scorer.
Mate, listen. I mean, it's
Right.
wonderful to hear that you feel that way, both in terms of your career on and indeed off the pitch, and what you're doing now with your media endeavours. I mean, I don't mess around, mate. When I say I've been a fan of Swindon Town for the best part of 35 years, and when I draw up my list of of my favourite players that have worn the red shirt, I'm not just saying it to blow sunshine up your backside, mate. We're going to touch on several stories, my personal ones, and no doubt the people that are listening have all got personal stories of interacting with you. I think what really stands you apart, Sam, from a lot of lads that pulled on the Swindon Town shirt is you're such an everyman character. I reckon you get on like house on fire with Clem. I know you've met him, but you've got you. I reckon you're actually an Aussie, mate, as opposed to having Scottish blood in you. You've got that wonderful ability to. You'd score a hat trick on the pitch against Barnsley on your debut, and then you come outside and you talk to people like that. You weren't a pro, and for someone that spent a good portion of my time working at 442 around a lot of professional footballers, you were a real breath of fresh air when I first met you, and you maintained that right throughout your career, mate. I mean, I've had some wonderful anecdotes from Leyton Orient fans, from Luton supporters, and even from supporters north of the border that have said similar things about you, mate. You're a really genuine bloke, so I hope you get. I hope you get as much out of tonight as we will, mate. Get the opportunity to talk to you, but.
Yeah.
Clearly, when you and I were setting up this show, I said to you, listen, there's various things that you've done both in Swindon and around your career generally, which I wanted to try and see if we could bring something a little bit different to the table. And what we're going to really try and get under the hood of today is. I talked about that everyman aspect of it, but let's just make no bones about it. You're a real legend at Swindon Town, and I know you're probably blushing as I say that to you. But what we really want to get under the hood of, and get into the nuts and bolts of, is how you go about achieving that kind of status, how you went about maintaining it, how you've looked after your legacy since we've gone. So hopefully we'll have a fair bit of fun. But I thought we'd take it right if we start, mate, by taking it right the way back. So what I wanted to do was we picked you up from Chelsea, which I remember at the time you'd had a couple of loan spells prior to departing Chelsea, a couple of which have been really, really good, really, really super promising. And I think it was like the Northampton spell that you didn't feel you necessarily covered yourself in, massive amounts of glory from conversations you and I have had. But tell me about, you're at Chelsea one day and then Swindon Town come along and there's interest. How did you first find out about it, and what were your first thoughts when you heard the word Swindon Town and the possibility of leaving the bridge?
It was probably relief initially, because I was kind of all set to go to Kilmarnock, believe it or not, a few years before Danny Invincible made that move. And I probably wasn't that comfortable with moving away from home at that stage. I would have been 21. As you said, I just had a year at Northampton, which I'd found quite tricky, to be honest. I didn't enjoy that year. The football, I was able to turn around a little bit in the second half of the season, scored a few goals and played a little bit more. But I think my own happiness really was paramount when I did come to leave in Chelsea. So I was excited as soon as I heard it was Swindon. I'd had a couple of friends in the England under-18s who were from Swindon, so I'd been down. Obviously, I knew I'm a football nut, Mark, as you know. So I was well aware of Swindon as a club. I'd been to see Swindon in the Premier League play at QPR and at the county ground, so I'd witnessed that two victories against QPR. I'd seen the supporters. My dad's friend used to have a bar just round the corner from QPR, and I'd seen all the Swindon fans in their fancy dress on that final day of the season, I think it was anyway. So, that was kind of the memories. The playoff final as well, the Glenn Hoddle game, that was quite strong in my mind as well. So I think I was very respectful from the outset that it was a really proper club with great history. Obviously, location wise, it suited me as well. So when I got the call, I was probably excited. I was excited to go down. Probably showed a bit more professionalism then than Andy King, because I remember saying I wanted to come down and have a look around the place, and he kind of went along with it. And when I got down, he was kind of just pointed in a couple of directions of the away dressing room and the pitch. I don't think anyone had been asked to been shown round before, so he found that a little bit comical. But
all the glamorous corners.
Yeah. I remember him just thinking, what on earth does he think I'm going to produce here to make him sign from Chelsea? So it was a little bit of a wasted journey. But obviously, when I came on trial, I quickly realised that it was a place that I wanted to come to.
Yeah. Well, so Swindon as a place, obviously, you said that you had some background. I mean, you're talking about what I would refer to as almost like the tail end. Well, I say the tail end. Obviously, we still had the season in the Prem, but for me, our real golden era, the glory years of Lou Macari, Ozzy Ardiles, Glenn Hoddle were coming to an end at sort of 93 at the point of that playoff game. And then we've obviously had a dip away, and yeah, we had a little blip under Steve McMahon before it all went horribly wrong again. But it's great that you're aware of the club and the stature of the club. What about the town? Did you know much about Swindon as a place?
I think I'd had the one night out, Mark, to be honest. We'd ended up in a shady part of town, if there is such a thing, because I recounted that to my mate, who I think he's not involved in football anymore, but he's a good mate of Charlie Austin, so I keep across his social media and such like. But I remember playing the pitch and putt course, on the way into town.
Yeah.
One of the first roundabouts you come to, you know what I mean. It's a little
I
bit
know what you mean.
The names of the places now, but yeah, I remember having a night out with him and enjoying myself. That was probably part of the reason. I remember thinking, oh, do you know what I mean? There's life outside of London.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a memory, but beyond that, nothing too much. I've been down with Millwall, if memory serves me right, and not played, and then I played there for Northampton, and I remember I didn't get a kick. Matty Hayward played me very well that day, but I remember, and this isn't blowing smoke up you guys' asses. It was a good atmosphere that day when I came to Northampton. Probably two struggling sides, but I remember it being quite intimidating. I remember the town end being in good voice, and I just remember thinking, again, this would be a good place to play football. When the side's going well and the fans are behind you, this has got the potential to be a really difficult place to come. So they were the kind of they were the kind of memories that I'd had of the place before. Obviously, it became a permanent fixture in my life.
So do you actually remember you said about when you've arrived in Kingy, you said to Kingy, I wanted to have a bit of a look around and whatnot. Do you have any memories of sort of like your first journey as a prospective Swindon Town player into Swindon? Do you still remember any of your instincts that you had making your way towards the county ground?
I don't remember the drive. I remember pulling up, obviously down the side of the cricket ground there, and I remember seeing Andy Gurney and Matty Hewlett in the corridor, and I remember getting a really Matty was just the nicest geezer in the world, which you'll know. He had like a real twinkle in his eye, just very welcoming, smiley character, and I remember him being like feeling like really warm, that he was really pleased to see me, and Gurn's probably not so much, but just remember them both.
I don't think Gurns was ever pleased to see anyone, was he? Really?
Do you know what? No, he wasn't. But he turned into he was a brilliant character, and I loved playing with people like him. And obviously, we had a good relationship. But I remember Matty being really smiley. I remember meeting Linda, the then secretary, and then I think it was a combination of, I think it was Crosser, Malcolm Crosby, and King. I don't think Neil Ruddock was around that day, but I'd already spoken to him on the phone briefly before arriving. So I think it was just literally a conversation with King Ian and Michael Crosby. They took me like in a little head tennis gym that we had at the time underneath the stand, and I think there was maybe some, one or two younger players knocking about. But yeah, that memory of meeting Matt Hewlett stuck with me really, probably because I'd had such a miserable time the previous year. Been quite a senior dressing room. It was quite an old dressing room at Northampton. So as soon as I arrived at Swindon, I felt there was a lot more lads around the same age as me. Not many senior guys, and it felt like a good fit. And looking back, that was a really nice first impression with obviously a lad who was he was a very kind young man anyway, Matty Hewlett.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm guessing there was a certain Mr. Nick Judd there, wasn't there, around that time, Nick? Have you got any memories of Sam's first day?
Yeah, I doing, Sam? You all right?
Good, Juddy. Yeah, very well, thanks, mate.
Good. I do seem to recall at one point Kingy got me to come and pick you up from the hotel at some point, and we had a quick chat. I remember thinking to myself, because I was still reasonably new and young at that point, just sort of thinking, this lad is just down here living on his own for a bit in a hotel room. It's not as glamorous as it shapes up to be, and it was just a bit of an eye opener into the world, really, because obviously you weren't too far from home, but you were still living in a hotel room for a bit. And what do you remember about that? Because it must be quite daunting when you're sort of going away.
Well, actually, boys, can I just interrupt at this stage and just explain for anyone that doesn't know who Nick is? Nick was the admin at Swindon Town at the time, what is now referred to as the admin at Swindon Town, when Sam first joined Swindon, and pretty much across Sam's spell as well. Nick wasn't a glorified chauffeur or some kind of club escort. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone that hadn't quite picked up on the tweets prior to the show.
Oh,
sorry, boys, I don't mean to interrupt. You carry on.
Definitely a glorified chauffeur at sometimes, I think. But yeah, I remember coming to pick you up, Sam, and just sort of remember thinking to myself, Christ, this lad's quite young. He's living on his own hotel room. What's that like?
Yeah, for the first few days, it's probably quite exciting. I've had different experiences of that. When I drove up to Scotland, up the M6, that was a different experience, and lived in a hotel in Perth for about 3 months. That took a lot of soul searching, looking out the window and thinking, with all respect to St Johnstone, how has it come to this? Where on earth am I? How long is that stretch of road between Carlisle and Scotland? That was a bizarre feeling. Somewhere like Swindon, I suppose, it was close enough to drive really from my home. That was probably one of the reasons behind, it being a good fit after the year I'd had previously at Northampton, where I lived in the town and wasn't best in my best frame of mind. So that was part of it. But yeah, I suppose it's not too much of a problem as long as you get your situation resolved quite quickly. But I mean, the bit of the story we don't want to miss out is that my first kind of involvement with the squad was at Pontins in Southport. And I don't know if you were on that trip, Juddy, but I remember Andy King actually organised Alan Reeves to pick me up at Epsom Station, which, by the way, is a lot closer to where Reevesy lives than where I live. So he done me up a little bit there. And I remember going up in his Ford Escort all the way to probably would have been Birmingham, where we met the rest of the squad. So that was quite a, straight into the lines then a little bit. I'd not met anyone, and all of a sudden you're on the coach going away in those close quarters for probably the best part of a week, not knowing any of the players, and similar to the hotel thing and meeting new people, it's intimidating, really intimidating. And I would have been stood at Epsom Station that morning pretty petrified, really. You're a 21-year-old lad. Back then it was a very very different world to what the young players are encountering now. It was a very unforgiving place, a football dressing room. You either sank or swam, and that was my first impression of everyone really on that trip, and my first involvement with the squad, which it did actually set the tone for those 3 years. Honestly, I always say that the first time I trained with the boys, the first time I had a night out with them, if those days and nights wouldn't have gone as well as they had done up there in obviously probably the worst pre-season tour I'd ever been on, the worst conditions, don't think we had a pitch. If that hadn't happened, the 3 years wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be talking to you now, because feeling wanted, feeling loved, being rated as a player, all those things, my whole life has proved those things had to be in place. And that's just in my makeup, and that all kind of aligned for me at Swindon. So
What do you
yeah,
remember
I always.
Yeah. What do you remember about your initiation on the pre-season tour?
I don't think there was nothing really. All there was obviously was, the hard training in a park, I think it was. And I remember being taken aback again by the youthfulness of the squad, the quality with the lads. But I trained really well, and you've always got to put a mark down as a player. You can be the best lad off the pitch and all that stuff, but you've got to get the lads' respect as a player straight away. And I think I did that in those early days. And then we had a night out, and Juddy, you'll know, at that age I was partial to a nightclub or two or whatever. I enjoying myself at the right time, and we had a great few days socialising, and I loved the lads. Razor was a big part of that back then. Whatever the Swindon fans think of him in terms of the way things unravelled at the club, in terms of a teammate, he was first class for me. Putting the confidence in me to go and do what I did that season. He was a big reason for it during that pre-season, and he was probably, socially, he'd do absolutely anything for the players. And I know he was earning a fair, whack of money at the time, and that turned maybe certain people at the club or maybe in the support against him. But that was never an issue between the players and Razor. And I remember he organised everything from top to bottom on that trip, because he'd been such a legend in those parts. So socially, I know it sounds a little bit old school, but socially, it was so enjoyable those few days, and the football went really well. The two hand in hand meant my decision such an easy one, and I was desperate to come to the club on a full-time basis.
So Sam, you talked there, Sam, about that feeling of wanting of being wanted, of being loved, and winning the boys' sort of respect straight off the bat. I guess I was going to look at that from a two-pronged perspective. Firstly, talking about the playing side, was it what you were showing the lads on the training pitch at that stage in terms of showing them you were a bit of a player, or was it as a character fitting in? And obviously you come with a certain pedigree, but what was it that kind of won the lads over when you in order to feel that love, feel that acceptance? Was there anything specific that you did?
Well, I think me and Matty Hayward stayed out the longest out of everyone and had to sneak in. So I think they thought, he's got a bit about him on the night out. I remember we were on all fours. Kind of, there was a light on in one of the chalets it would have been, and we thought, that could be Malcolm Crosby's or something. So we were it was like a military operation trying to get back to our room. So I think it's a combination of everything you said, Mark. Because coming from Chelsea, obviously, comes with a tag straight away, and it probably hindered me during that year at Northampton, where people are expecting me to win games, individually by the running beyond 5 people and sticking in the top corner every other week, which is not realistic when you're playing in first team games. But I think it was the way I train in terms of my ability. I think that came out straight away at Swindon, and the lads probably thought I was, a target man who was going to be strong, good with his back to goal. And when they realised that I could play a bit too, I think that gained everyone's respect immediately. And when I saw that confidence just builds within me. And I think back, I speak to my girlfriend about the subsequent years where I lost that belief and why I lost that confidence. And I trace it all the way back to school. And, when I felt like that at school, when I played for England under 18s, and it's almost when I went somewhere where I'm the top man, and you feel that you've got responsibility. And I felt that at Swindon straight away. And it's two-pronged with the manager as well. And if the manager believes in you, gives you the confidence, then I've really prospered in my career. And it happened later when I went, it's a bit of a dive down, but when I went to Queen of the South in Scotland, I had that same sense again. So there's something within me when I'm a leader, when I'm the top guy, if you like, that I kind of prosper. Whenever I felt like a bit of a small fish in a bigger pond, that's when the doubts kind of set in. So I think those early days at Swindon, going back to it, were just so imperative, really, because when the football kicks off, I was in really confident mood, and when the goals flowed in pre-season, that was it, really. No turning back. You know, had they gone badly those games, again, we wouldn't be sitting here now. So that pre-season was everything everything in terms of what I was able to produce.
And it's fascinating hearing your take on Razor as well. And I mean, we won't. I think you've hit the nail on the head. We won't spend too much time talking about Neil Ruddock and his impact at Swindon, because there's still a lot of people that feel very sort of, have got very raw feelings about him, rightly or wrongly. I think what's clearly very interesting is that we're obviously talking about the building of that kind of legendary status here. I mentioned, I described you as being one of our favourite sons. I hope it goes some way to making maybe people sort of have a slightly different thought about Razor, given the impact he had on your career. I think, Sam, I said I was going to talk about sort of two aspects here, and I was going to bring Tyler in because I know, certainly, the club have been fantastic in terms of helping Tyler and his family at various points from a supporting perspective. Sort of, being a local family close to Swindon Town, and the outreach of football of our footballers have certainly been beneficial with Tyler. What, from your perspective, when did you first sort of, or what were your first memories of reaching out to the Swindon community as something more than just a lad hitting the nightclubs? Because I've got very clear memories of bits and pieces that you did around Swindon that I kind of saw from afar. Did you you're very kind-hearted fella, Sam. And again, I want to be a bit careful when we deliver this show, so I don't want to just give everyone the impression that I am just sitting blowing smoke up your backside, but you genuinely are. At what point did it click in your head that your role in Swindon as a almost like I don't want to call it a community asset. I hope you get what I'm trying to say, that that need to be something bigger than just a footballer at the club. There is a community here that needs to be reached out to. At what point did you feel that that was an important part of your role?
Straight away, really. Even before the year at Swindon, I think it comes from your family, really. The way you're brought up, the way I am is probably from my mum. To be completely frank, it's the way you conduct yourself. The way you conduct yourself is everything. And I think growing up as focused on football that I was, going to QPR week in, week out, having the passion for football, the desperation to be a footballer, but yet having those social skills kind of knocked into me by my mum, it went hand in hand, really, Mark. You didn't have to think about it. I realised very quickly that people had warmed towards me down there, and I want to be liked at the end of the day, and I didn't want to have any arrogance. That's what I've always prided myself on. Not having any arrogance. I enjoyed all the media duties. I used to love talking to Sean. That's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm not Sean in particular, but you know what I mean. I loved coming out and speaking to Ed or Sean, John Ritson, and speaking to them. Like this is my dream. All of a sudden, I've got people singing my name. I'm scoring goals. My name's in the paper. Like, enjoy it, live it, and give people what they want. And that's why it narks me so much to this day when players aren't open with the press, because what an opportunity you've got to show your character. It was a dream. It was a pleasure to do everything that came with being a footballer. And I suppose the thing that sticks in my mind the most, and forgive me, I've forgotten the guy's name, and he texted me not so long ago, but I used to do a lot in the education centre there at Swindon. Juddy will know the details better than me, but the classroom there where they used to have.
That's it. Mark is his name, I think.
Mark, yeah, and they used to have various people in. He was a Geordie, wasn't he?
That's it.
Yeah, and they used to have various, kids in there, and I was forever in there, really doing odds and sods after training and such like. But it was. I know it goes. I'm not naive enough to think that it doesn't. That the opportunities didn't arise for me because the football was going well. Of course, that goes hand in hand. But people that are thriving at football clubs probably don't. do stuff in the community or find it a chore. It never was for me, and I'm not just saying that. It was just it was part of it was part of the privilege that I had, and part of the success. Do you know what I mean? It was part of the success.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
another strand to it. And there'd be stages in my career later on where I wasn't asked to do those things, and it hurt. Do you know what I mean? That's weird to think of it like that. But to be honest,
Yeah.
that was something that probably upset me later in my career. Yeah, your phone stops ringing as much to agents and prospective buyers and people in the press wanting to speak to you, but not being asked to do stuff in the community and stuff like that. That probably didn't happen as readily later on, and that was as upsetting as some of the other things I've just mentioned. It was a privilege, and I think that's why. Yeah, that's a major reason as to why I still get asked to do stuff in the town now. Really, it's a big part of my life, and I mentioned my mum there. Big part of her life as well. Those 3 years I look back on as big a part of mine as it is my family and my close circle of mates who love coming down to Swindon, and we still speak so fondly about those times.
Sam, it's amazing to hear you say those things, because they're all you're basically bringing to life what I think a lot of us feel you feel without actually knowing it, if you know what I mean. I think what I wanted to, I mean, I thought it'd probably be quite interesting for you to hear, from certainly, I mean, Tyler. As I say, there's been various times, last couple of years where the football club's been fantastic and certain players have reached out. I mean, from a fan's point of view, what does it actually mean? When you're having a tough time and you've got somebody like a Sam, or I mean, you had some fantastic support from the likes of Jerry Yates, Owen Doyle. What does it actually mean to a supporter when you have someone of Sam's ilk, reach out to you, talk to you, support you? How does it resonate with you and your family? What's the lasting impact of that?
Just sort of like puts a massive smile on your face, and like makes you think that they aren't just sort of footballers that play for the club. They're footballers that play for the club, but also care about the fan base that surrounds it. It like I said, just puts a smile on your face, really, and sort of helps you get through it.
Yeah, I think I think also I think there are certain players, Sam, that do it. It's very obvious they're doing it very naturally. It like you said, it's something that is inherent in your upbringing. And I mean, Tyler will no doubt echo what I was about. The guy that is kind of currently playing a very very similar card to you, Sam, as just a very very genuine guy, very well liked, and also very talented young man on the pitch is Louis Reed at Swindon. He plays like I say, plays a card. It's just effortless. He's just a good lad, big fans' favourite, but has a very very similar attitude. A couple of weeks ago at the county ground, just stood outside chatting with me. He didn't know who I was from Adam. He just stood there talking to me and my daughters, and was fascinated to find out that I foster kids. He was really really wanted to have a chat about that. He really wanted to talk about being here next year. He was really open about his contract status, very open about the fact that he's very settled in Swindon. A lot of what you said already tonight, he's almost like repeated that. Again, it's not like it was pre-rehearsed, but sort of repeats that script. So I know you're aware of Louis Reed, mate, but certainly, somebody that I think you probably enjoy having a beer with. I think you've got a lot in common. But okay, so moving forward, Sam, we talked about you kind of arriving at the club and you feeling that love straight away. Now, it can't have got much better than the first time you stepped out on the pitch for Swindon Town in a professional capacity. You made quite an impact on your debut, mate, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, just amazing. I remember that morning. Juddy's probably talking about one of the hotels up in Old Town, and I remember staying up there the night before and being very nervous. I was a very anxious child, and it was something that I was able to control when I moved into professional footballer. But when you look back on it now, retrospectively, I think sometimes how did I manage to do that? And that was probably one of those occasions where driving to the ground, people speak about this often in professional sport, but there are times where you'd rather be anywhere else in the world, than where you're going, because that's sometimes how much apprehension and anxiety is flowing in you. And I probably would have had, high levels of anxiety that morning. And I remember going down to the county ground, and the thing was, I've been playing so well in the pre-season. My finishing had been so good. etc. That, you know, I've already spoken about moments, you know, in that pre-season or days that propelled me to do what I did in the 3 years. And that first goal for Swindon is probably another one of those talking points that just gave me such confidence. And yeah, I remember it vividly that day. We played very well against Barnsley, that were much fancied as well. Hot day.
Yeah.
I think I had a goal disallowed and missed another chance, and the goal disallowed was never a foul either. So I should have really had 5, I think.
Not that you're being greedy, but
no,
you know.
not being greedy, but I remember it, and you know, there's that day, there's the goal I scored in the FA Cup for Wickham. There's probably the night at Ellen Road. There's probably 5 or 6 days in my career that are right up there, and that is definitely one. I remember, you know, being back home with a few friends. I remember which ones were at the game that day. I remember the feeling in the dressing room. I remember the lads all signing the ball, the match ball. Sol Davis put something offensive on it, and left about 2 weeks later. And I probably didn't come across him again until I was in the Luton dressing room with him. But no, just incredible, you know. Yeah, something. Yeah, I spend a lot of time talking about it now, and be one of the first football tales that I tell my children when they're old enough to care. So yeah, it was amazing, and yeah, can still feel that emotion now, really.
So you walk out the ground, Sam. You've got the match ball. You've scored this hat trick. Like you said, you've gone from anxiety in the morning to hat trick hero on your debut. Fans already starting to sing your name. At that point, at the penny started to drop. Hang on a second, like this could be so much bigger than me just being like having a decent stint at Swindon. Like this, I could do something really special here. Like, did you start to already at that stage get a feeling that, you know, that with a fair wind, you could paint you could start to paint your name into the history of the club, or was it still at that stage? Were you still thinking along the lines of every game at a time? Like what was going through your mind as you left the ground? Because not many people score a hat trick on their debut, mate. So your confidence must have just been soaring. Could you see the bigger picture? Like what did you start to think about what the future might look like now?
Yeah, Mark, to answer your question, to be brutally honest, I probably was thinking about the bigger picture already. Yeah, I was probably thinking that, you know, this is the start of something, because I'd had that, what we've been talking 4 or 5 weeks maybe leading into that game, where I've been playing the pre-season games and scoring. Yeah. Swindon have been fighting tooth and nail to sign me. I'd had obviously like I touched on, the confidence, the compliments coming from Kingy and Razor. I remember meeting the owner, Seaton, or the benefactor at the time. You know, obviously at the they were desperately trying to get me over the line. So and obviously I'd had that relationship building with all the lads, and you know, the most important thing is you know, growing up 17, 18, 19, I felt, and without sounding arrogant, I thought I had all the ingredients to be a top player. And my confidence had been knocked probably during that spell at Northampton for the reasons we've already spoken of. You know, I had a bit of a tough time there. You know, managers quite, you know, openly quite tough on me really that year. You know, behind closed doors, the fans really hadn't taken to me. So that was a lot for a 19, 20-year-old, you know, to the extent where I'd had probably people giving me a bit of stick in the street and, you know, stuff like that. So it's taken its toll. So I probably felt that the ability that I had was coming to the fore, and now I was motoring, and this was going to be not 3 goals every week, but this was going to be this feeling was going to be something I was going to encounter a lot more. That's the honest. Yeah. I think that's the honest truth. It'd be easy for me to say, take each game as it comes, but I think because of those pre-season games, and I'm a bit of an anorak. I think I scored 5 in 5 or 6 in 6 in that pre-season, and then obviously to score 3 on the first day. Yeah, I just think that my head was held so high at that point that I kind of, it was probably the moment I arrived. I probably had 10 goals maybe, or 15 goals already in my professional career, but that was the moment I'd arrived really, and the moment I realised that I belonged.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, certainly from a fan's perspective, I'm sure Juddy, and certainly I know Tyler's a whippersnapper, Sam. He's only sort of 17, mate. But you know, I know Deb's his mum's listening in. She's an enormous fan, and she's of my generation and your generation. So we would all concur, mate, in saying it was just quite obvious. It was such a natural fit from the outset, and I didn't sense any anxiety about you. And it's only when we've had conversations post your retirement that you mentioned stuff to me about, anxiety and mindset and things like that in relation to your career, because that's something I just would never have associated with you. Obviously, hot topic at the moment. Mental health, well-being of footballers. It's a very, very different landscape now. And maybe I wasn't thinking along those lines back then because it just wasn't the hot topic amongst footballers. I think it was quite a brutal environment if you were a supporter looking at a player. You're on our club's wage bill, mate. You paid to score goals, get out, score goals. Don't care about your mental health. Seemed to be more of the kind of atmosphere and expectation of supporters at the time, and I think that's changed enormously over the last sort of couple of years. But so. Funny enough, I mentioned about talking to Louis Reed a week or so back, and it's always interesting watching the lads like leaving the ground and sort of talking to the various supporters, including Football Phil. I'm sure. Do you have any kind of memorable any particularly memorable encounters on the Arkles to the car park run, mate, from your career at Swindon that again kind of fed into the developing of what became Super Sammy Parkin? Do you have any anecdotes or memories from that period?
Do you know what? I might have got this completely wrong, but there's a part of me that feels that Football Phil was in the Isle of Wight for one of those pre-season games. So I think it might have been my first game, and that's a hell of a shout. But I think I might have got accosted by Phil on that trip. So he was. I was very aware of who he was very early on, and Les, obviously, who used to wait by the players' entrance there. But no, nothing really that sticks out in mind. Obviously, there's the famous night after my last game where I went in the County Ground Hotel for a quick drink and what have you. But no, obviously Football Phil you'd speak to on the way in, same group of people. Can picture them all now, around the ground, and the ones that get your autographs and such like. But yeah, I always try to have a chat. Not a problem on the way in or on the way home, and thankfully for the 3 years I wasn't walking out in the dark and getting sick on too many occasions. So it was always a pleasant walk.
I think you can tell a lot about a player by the way they react when they're going to and from a match. I think even that little short walk from their car to the stadium. I think you can tell a lot about players as people in terms of recognising their importance. A lot of players do sadly kind of sort of see it as a bit of I need to get into the stadium. Others have got more time. Fans, you can definitely tell a lot about a person and their personality and their perception of their role in the club just by how they behave around supporters, I think.
Do you know what? It's a really interesting point, and I think, this season there's been a couple of lads that have really, really impressed me in terms of watching them engage with the supporters. And it's a shame that Kane Kessler-Hayden's not come back because, as I'm sure Tyler, you'll probably have a view on this with the players that we've seen coming and going. This season we've been really lucky. I think Ben Garner's got an attitude towards bringing a certain type of player into the club, but yeah, Kane Kessler-Hayden, you can see he's got great pedigree. He's been really well brought up by Villa. He's clearly, I think, similar to you, Sam, his family have put the right kind of values into him. And yeah, it's I can't echo Juddy's point even further. I mean, Tyler, who would you say from the current crop sort of fits in with with this narrative?
Well, I've got to agree with you on Reedy. He's definitely one of them. I'd probably say Gladwin as well. He has a lot of time to the fans. I mean, he's been there 4 times now, so that don't shock me.
Yeah.
And Kane and Tyrese before they left as well, and McCurdy, can't forget him.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, they're a just a really sound bunch of lads, Sam. And again, it's testament to you, mate. I can't enthuse enough about how much it means. I mean, like I said, we foster kids, and one of my real levers that I pull, the kids sort of see a life beyond the sort of background and trauma that they've experienced before they come to my family, is through football. And I've been very lucky to see my football club play a massive role in the very rapid changing of the mindset of a young person that's in our care at the moment. And I cannot stress enough that if any footballers listening to this, or hopefully hears a recording of it if we're further down the line, you never know who you're talking to and what's going on in their life at that time. And those little conversations make an enormous difference, and can make a huge difference to the outlook of particularly a young person, I believe. But I mean, Sam, you'll probably laugh at this. I mean, even when I was at 442, mate, I never lost that kind of sort of nerdy football fan. Just love talking to pros. I love an autograph. I love having a photo taken with a footballer. I've never lost that. I find there's a lot of people, once they're in the industry, they have to become a little bit too cool for school. And I'm sure you've probably seen that up close. Like there are people that I've worked with that I'll see as serious senior execs that are gagging to get an autograph, but for whatever reason they just won't because they don't want to embarrass themselves. Um, and you, like I said, you and I were talking when I first asked you to come on and do this, and I've got a very, very clear recollection of the first day Juddy introduced me to you. And like I said, I was just bowled over by just how normal you are. So, mate, sterling effort. But look, getting back onto the action, Sam. So, obviously, you ended up sort of like attracting the moniker of Super Sammy Parkin. What went through your mind? I think you sort of touched on it earlier about living the dream. What went through your mind the first time? What was your first recollection of hearing that song being sung at the county ground? How did that? What, did you immediately hear it? Was it like something that built up, or was it something that just got belted out? And how did that make you feel?
I think it was probably after the second goal, maybe, because the first goal, fans are probably thinking, "Oh, hello," because they'd heard the reports from Northampton the previous year, and I probably hadn't been too enthused. So when that first one went in, I think that was a good start. But when I got the second on the debut, I think that was probably the first time I heard the song. And I probably had my name sung a little bit at Millwall and Wickham, because I'd had some good games there and some important goals, but not, to that extent. And obviously, because of the way the game unfolded that day, it was probably sung incessantly for the last, 20 minutes, half an hour of the game, if memory serves me right. And then obviously, I mean, John Ritson takes credit for this, doesn't he? I think from the old advert. I think John's obviously his headline on the Monday was Super Sammy's triple whammy, I think. So I think John takes credit for it. I'm sure the song was sung that day, but obviously, for the reasons I've stated, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but for me to play 1 minute on a professional football ground to score a goal was beyond my wildest dreams, because I was such a football nut growing up. And, I remember running on the pitch, at the end of the season at QPR in the days when you were allowed to. And it felt like it felt like this parallel universe, it felt like this holy grail, like looking at the stands and the floodlight. It didn't feel real. So when I was actually doing it, it was sensational to get that to happen as well, to be like a hero for a day. It was just wanting more. It was like a drug, I suppose. You just wanted it, or you wanted more of it, because it's such a amazing feeling. Nothing comes close really to it. That and scoring a goal. That's why they're the two things I miss now. I don't miss training. I don't miss the dressing room. All those cliches. I don't miss that at all, because I've got my mates away from football and I've got my girlfriend and kids and what have you. But I miss the feeling of scoring a goal and miss the fans singing my name, because that was the dream. That was the dream. It's like I always say, you feel that everyone's watching you for that minute or two or whatever it is. Everyone in that ground is transfixed on you. So naturally, it's like endorphins and like the adrenaline. You feel almost tingling, I suppose. So there was probably not an occasion in the subsequent 3 years where I didn't know that song was just about to start, or would, a few people had started singing it. I heard every time, and the fans used to sing it, before kickoff every game, and it used to give me the same feeling week after week after week, which was just amazing. And again, another facet, another ingredient of why I had the success, because I had that trust and I had that admiration.
Oh, mate, that's incredible. While you've been talking, Sam, we've been getting messages coming through to me, people asking me to say certain things to you. And one of the guys, Ben, I've been trying to get him to come on and say it to you in person, but Ben Bradley, he's a little bit further down our list of listeners, just wanted me to tell you thank you very much for helping him fall in love with football. Mate, that's if that's not a nice responsibility, or a nice endorsement of your impact, mate. You've got it right there, and I know he's not alone in that. I've had loads of messages, tweets, direct messages in the build up to this show with people asking me to say similar things to you. So there you go, Ben. I've passed it on to Sam, mate. I hope that's got a big smile on your face. And no, mate, it's not a big ask, but thank you for thank you for being so humble, Sam. I don't know if you want to say anything to Ben.
Yeah, no, that's to be honest, it makes me it makes me awfully proud. Bit saddened because I didn't, I still have that upset that I didn't produce it across the whole of my career, but I'm very aware that, when I see lads in their 20s now in Swindon, they look at me like, the way that Ben just described there, which is just amazing, that I encourage like a generation, of young Swindon fans to enjoy themselves. And that's what I always wanted to do, Mark. I wanted to be a skillful player, an entertaining player, someone who scored great goals, got people off the edge of their seats, took people on. And I think in those 3 years I did all those things. I'm just sad I couldn't do it over a longer period. But I'm pleased that it makes me feel amazing, because that's why I wanted to go to the football. I used to love watching, off the top of my head, Roy Wegerle play for QPR, Trevor Sinclair, people who excited and celebrated. Do you know what I mean? When you scored a goal, jumped in the crowd, that's what it was about for me. Like not celebrating and all that rubbish. It was about playing out, I suppose. I didn't do it intentionally, but you're doing what the lads who are watching would have done if they were out there in the shirt.
And, I totally get that, mate.
I think
totally get
scoring a goal is the greatest thing that apart from obviously the birth of children, getting married maybe, which I haven't done yet, but scoring a goal, that does not get better than that. So you should enjoy it, and I think I did every time in the Swindon shirt.
Mate, it was clear you did. Genuinely, it was clear that you did. You talked about the singing of songs, but another aspect of fandom and sort of getting behind you obviously played in an era where names and numbers on the back of the shirt started to kind of really become popular, with supporters literally getting their favourite players on the back. And I know that your name was incredibly popular on shirts. What does that mean to a player? Like, when you're making that walk from the car park to the county ground dressing rooms, and you're seeing shirts with your name on it, do you notice these? Like, do you try and keep up a count? Like, what must that feel like, actually seeing your family name on the back of a shirt and your shirt number?
Yeah, it was surreal, to be honest, and I didn't really get used to it. Really, I didn't have the adulation, like I had at Swindon, elsewhere to that extent. So I never really grew accustomed to it. So it would have been a thrill every time. I mean, someone's messaged me tonight on Twitter about a shirt that he's bought or he's won that he wants signed. So little things still pop up now, and my girlfriend will tell you, because I signed something for someone recently, and another person who contacted me on social media wanting something for their partner. And I wouldn't say it's so much an ego boost, it's just a reminder of that time, and I suppose what I still mean to some people. So it's a lovely reminder, and I think, to answer your question, at the time, it's probably a bit of a, like, this is amazing, this is just thrilling to see the to the extent that people appreciate what you're doing, and to go to those levels, because it was a big decision, wasn't it? I remember getting my QPR shirts, and every season it was a big one. Obviously, Sir Les used to win out most years, but you know, it was always a big decision in my family with my brother. You know, who and my best mate, who we're going to get on our QPR shirt. So it's not something I would have taken lightly. I would have been chuffed every time.
Ah, mate. Well, let's get you off the subject of QPR. I'm conscious that we haven't got a huge amount of time with you, Sam. I mean, you're welcome, by the way, to stay as long as you like. There's so much stuff that we want to talk to you about.
I've only got baby monitors to go and look at, Mark. So crack on for
well,
that.
exactly that. So I don't want to waste time talking about QPR, mate. I don't care what your heartstrings tell you. We're talking about keeping it purely red and white tonight. What from your perspective, Sam, during your time at Swindon, what did you have a favourite stand, I've been asked to ask you, that you enjoyed celebrating in front of? Was there a stand you instinctively felt pulled towards at Swindon? And if so, why?
Oh, I'd be a brave man to say to not say the town end, wouldn't I? But there was something about the far corner of the Don Rogers, it would have been, wouldn't it? You know, the Stratton Bank corner there. I seem to end up. I seem to end up there quite a lot. But that said, I remember, you know, I remember getting a bit of stick from the Don Rogers a few times. I think I turned to them and probably said a few choice words, but because things went so well for me during my spell, nothing ever came of it. At other clubs, it would be on the back page of the local paper or something like that. So I probably was allowed to give a little bit back at Swindon at times. But yeah, maybe that corner. But obviously there wasn't like a side of the town end that I tend to run to or anything like that. But there would have been probably occasions when I would have, you know, gone towards my family as well, or mates if I had a few friends down for the game. But yeah, that I would say that corner of the Stratton Bank was probably where I was drawn towards. I don't know if it was specifically vociferous during that period, but I do remember a few good like kind of pylons with the lads over in that direction.
Yeah, I think lesser so in the last few years because Stratton Bank inevitably has been empty. And the very, very corner of it has obviously got some structural issues from what I understand, but it's always been a very popular end purely because it's nearly away fans. So, you know, mainly because of the banter and I think it attracts a certain sort of mindset, you know, like people love going up there because obviously the banter's a little bit rough and ready between the two sets of supporters. But, all right, Sam. So look, we could spend so much time talking about your goals and your career at Swindon, but let's just work on the premise that obviously everything's been absolutely tickety-boo. You've managed to keep it super fresh. The goals have been flying in. You've avoided it going stale. You know, you've loved every goal. You've clearly lived for the moment. I've really got a sense of that. And then, now this is when you and I first came into contact with my professional hat on. You'll probably recall taking me out for lunch, you charming devil in Teddington. But you clearly had a superb season. You were voted one of the top players in the Football League in 442's top 50 players outside the Premier League. You've ended up on the front cover of 442, and much to my heartache, we went out. First time I've met you, you turned up, bit of a surprise guest for me. I came downstairs expecting a parcel. I was told I had something waiting for me in reception. I walk into reception of 442 Towers, and there's Sam Parkin waiting to say hello to me. That was a big thrill. But I don't know if you recall, but I remember we went out for lunch that day, and you were under the impression it looked like you knew you were leaving at that stage, and it looked like you were either going to be going to Watford, but then there was the start of the Ipswich interest. So what I wanted to kind of discuss around that kind of period of your career was how do you go about, you built this wonderful kind of rapport with a football club, you've got that legendary status as a big star of the club, you've got the names on the shirts, people are singing your songs, you've got a real emotional attachment to the town, a real cling to it, and then someone comes along and basically says, right, we want a bit of that and we want to see that in a blue shirt. How do you manage those rumours, Sam? How do you manage that whole process of, you know, it's not a divorce because obviously you were on such good terms, but how do you manage that departure when you've got such status? How did you manage it?
I think irrelevant of my conduct during that time, I think it was the Swindon fans really. You know, this isn't, again, massaging anyone's ego or trying to not say it how it is. But I think because they were so okay about me moving, there was never any negativity towards the end of the season. I think everyone had accepted, and the reason for that, Mark, was the time between the Brighton defeat and what had happened in that following season. That promotion challenge hadn't materialised, and I think everyone would have, I hope, would have wanted me to stay, and I would have loved to have stayed. Obviously, if we'd have had a competitive team, if we'd have been promoted, of course I would have stayed. And who's to know what would have gone and happened with the rest of my career if we'd have gone up to the Championship that season. But I think it'd been so mediocre the following year that the acceptance was already there from the supporters, and I felt that. I didn't feel them clamouring for me to sign a new contract. Kingy spoke to me about a new contract and said they make me the best player in paid player in the club's history, or whatever it was at that time. But obviously I wasn't. It wasn't about that for me. Of course, the financial aspect becomes important, but to a lesser degree. For me, it was going to play in the Championship. I had to go and play in the Championship now. Otherwise, I'd have regretted it, maybe for the rest of my life. So, that's how it played out. And unfortunately, things weren't very straightforward towards the end because I can't remember exactly the hierarchy of who was doing what in the back room at Swindon. But, towards the end, there did have to be a few conversations to say, like, I need to move on now, and I think Kingy came in at the 11th hour. There had been no talk of a new contract. I think it was taken that I was leaving, and then kind of at the 11th hour there was a little bit of a contract put on the table, but it was never really about that for me. It was a question of finding the right move at that point, and I think, like I said at the outset, everyone had accepted it at Swindon, so that made it relatively straightforward. But it wasn't to say that I didn't pine for the place, very quickly when things didn't really happy for me at Ipswich.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So obviously you've ended up at Ipswich, Sam. You've now got, like I said, you've managed, whether that be just because of fan perception or because it's been skillfully managed with yourself and your management team and obviously your new club. Now you're with an opponent. What's your do you have any memories of coming back to the county ground as an opponent, and how did you go about handling
that? There was very few, to be honest. Very few times that I came back. I came back with Walsall, and that was that's my last memory of being there as a player, as an opponent, and I probably hid it quite well to Cuddy after the game because I met him for a quick beer, I think, in the lounges before I went home, and it had been an incredibly emotionally sapping experience. Not because I didn't get the reception that I was wanting or that I hoped for, but I didn't come on the pitch. I'd come with Walsall struggling towards the bottom end of the division. And I think I'd actually turned to Chris Hutchins, the manager, and I don't want to badmouth anyone tonight, but I think I turned to Chris Hutchins 10 minutes to go in the end of I think Swindon were going for the playoffs, Walsall were going for, we survived, mid-table. And I think I turned to the manager and I said, will you put me on? Please, can you put me on? And he didn't. And I remember driving back to London that night to my mum's. I don't know why. I was going back to see family. And it was one of the most upset I've ever been with football. Not to get the opportunity to properly say goodbye was incredibly challenging. And I don't think it happened again, really. And thankfully, I've been back and I've had the Hall of Fame staff and been on the pitch for a number of different reasons. And obviously, I've seen everyone at the club who means something to me. And I've spoken enough about my admiration for the club and everything, but to not get on the pitch and have a run around and then go up and see everyone's faces, that would have been amazing. So that was tough, really tough. And I think the home games, I remember playing against Swindon for Leyton Orient, and again that was a bit bittersweet because it wasn't going great for me at Orient, but I think I got a nice kind of reception from the Swindon fans. And probably always weird, even though the personnel's changed on the pitch and I don't have those personal relationships with the players anymore. And it's essentially, they're just 11 lads running around in a red shirt when you're out there. you know, I knew, you know, what I meant to the supporters, and I, you know, would have known a lot of the people in the away end, and would have known the faces. So that was an odd experience, but it wasn't as emotive as the last time at the county ground, which, you know, I remember for not so nice reasons, I suppose.
You know, you said something really interesting there, Sam, about, again, knowing about the supporters. And, you know, there are various legends that I've been lucky enough to come into contact with. And I had a similar conversation with Fraser Digby, who's a facer. Obviously, I know you know all about Fraser. And I remember he was playing for your beloved Super Hoops, and they absolutely gubbed us 4-0 at Loftus Road.
Yeah.
And I remember Fraser said something similar to me about a bunch of lads in the red shirt. He said, obviously, having been at the club 13 odd years, you know, you make a lot of friends and you see a lot of familiar faces in the stands. And Swindon's the sort of club where you do recall faces, you know, the regulars and whatnot. And I vividly recall him at the start of the second half, running down towards the Swindon fans and getting a standing ovation, as you'd expect him to get after 13 years. And you know, you can see he had tears in his eyes, you know. So, like I said, we talk about legends, a very, very rare breed. It's lovely to hear those words from your mouth, mate, basically, that it is, like you say, a bunch of lads running around in a red shirt, but, you know, ultimately you understand what you mean to the fans. I think it's a wonderful thing to hear. I think one of the things that I see with you now, Sam, so obviously you touched on the sort of tail end of your career, and we haven't had a chance to talk about Luton and whatnot. Again, I appreciate we're short on time, but then you've wrapped your career up, and we talked earlier about BBC, and you move into media. There's not anyone that's listening to this at the moment that doesn't watch Quest, and we'll see you doing the EFL highlight show. And how do you go about managing your bias, mate? I mean, appreciate TalkSport have probably changed the landscape in that respect, because you know what, it's all right to be partisan these days and have a bias. You clearly have a Swindon Town bias to a professional extent. What's it like when you're on camera and you see your Swindon highlights? What goes through your mind? Are you mindful of the supporters still? And is it a little nod and a wink to us, or what goes through your mind when you're summarising a Swindon performance?
I think the way the show's run and the way the presenter conducts it, I think it leads itself to having, you know, a bit of an allegiance, you know, from the pundits towards the team. I think they like to have that little bit of a crack and like you to show a bit of personality. So I think that comes out with my Swindon stuff, to be honest. And I think that's kind of what they want on that particular show. I'd like to think that I've still been, you know, I remember the John Sheridan, I think it was his penultimate game or something, and I went for it a little bit. So, you know, if the players, and I've watched it, have been particularly bad, I'll still say it about Swindon. But of course, you know, when things are good, and they were obviously during the Richie Wellens period when I was probably first doing the show, I probably waxed lyrical and had a bit of a twinkle in my eye. But I think they like that, really. So no, I think I still try and come across with a balance, and it's probably a two-way street, in that even if I did say something the Swindon fans didn't enjoy, the amount of negative mentions or whatever the phrase is on my Twitter would probably be very minute, because I get a bit of a pass, which of course is lovely. It's not to say I don't get the
mate, fair play.
It's not to say I don't get the odd message, but it's not as many as I get from Oxford fans, obviously.
Well, yeah, but mate, half the stuff that they'll be saying to you is from an illegible, insane mind. So, mate, just don't worry about it. You know, it's just one of those things. They're a peculiar bunch. Sam, just again, conscious of your time, buddy. I appreciate we're probably already taking slight liberties for you. I've only got a couple more questions for you personally. What's your from your time at Swindon Town? If you could say that you have one favourite memory that isn't your hat trick, what would your favourite sort of overriding memory be from your time at Swindon Town?
Oh, that's a big question. Big question.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it's difficult. I'll rattle a few off, and then we can. I mean, the night at Ellen Road, even though that ended in defeat, I think it's a collective thing as well, because we played amazing that night. But I think personally, that was a night, you know, again, just building on that kind of dream that I had as a young boy to play against the Premier League team and produce the performance I did. I probably think that's probably one of the finest performances I ever gave in any team shirt, to be honest. So that's a little bit of a personal one, I would say. The Wickham away game in my first season, I think that was my 10th goal of the season. Obviously, Wickham, is probably next in the ladder. And I was only there a short time, but I've got respect for the people there. I look out for their results, after Swindon. So that one always sticks out. And I remember driving up the hill that night, back up to the M40 at High Wycombe there.
Yep.
And there was a van load of Swindon fans in the car in front, and the back doors suddenly opened, and they all got out and started serenading me. And I think I was sat in there with a mate, which was just was brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Like amongst queues of traffic, like trying to get everywhere on a Saturday evening. So that's an amazing memory. There's so many. I suppose the last day as well. The last day, Chesterfield at home. I'd rushed back from a little niggly injury to make sure I could play in that kind of farewell. And, not only the game, the goal, the not being able to get in the car after the game. I was with my best mate. He was carrying, probably champagne and shirts and all the stuff I'd taken away as mementos from that last day. We went into the county ground, and then I had about probably 20 mates staying over in Swindon that night. Girls, lads, couples, all my closest friends from home, and that's what it was all about for me. It was obviously, I loved the adulation. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I wanted success for the team. The Brighton thing kills me now. Still, like I can't really speak about it. It probably ruined that. Even though I could still score goals, it ruined my I don't know. It just ruined my feeling really that last year. Do you know what I mean? We were a bit numb. I think that really took its toll in my third season. But I think what I wanted to say was like sharing what I had at Swindon with other people was what makes it so special for me. And like my friends coming down and being able to get the odd free beer or have experience a few of the things that I was able to at Swindon and share that with my nearest and dearest. I think that was a big part of it. So that last day, having everyone there, it was amazing. And I still think, they're the things like now that it's over that I think back to and just think, to go back to that night, to go back to those days when, we're young and all free and single and enjoying ourselves and all that, but it was just a brilliant time, a brilliant time in my life, and so I think I look back on that day as well. But that's not just the football; that's the collective, everything, all the emotion.
Yeah, well, listen, mate. I mean, my anecdote. It's interesting you talking about sharing. I think one of the reasons I've got loads of little nuggets and anecdotes that are connected to you, mate. But I'll take you back to that day where you turned up in Teddington and you took me out for lunch. Now there was no financial benefit for you to do that. There was no other than us having a mutual friend that just so happened to work at 442 Towers and had given you the nod that there was a mad raving Swindon fan that worked at 442. You turn up that day, took me out for lunch, and I will never forget at the end of the meal, you presented me with a little bag full of stuff that you had basically gathered up for me. And I remember I've got a wonderful signed picture from you. I've still got your signed polo shirt that has got pride of place at my house that you were wearing to and from games. Again, testament to you, mate, because ultimately I was just a Swindon Town fan. And you turning up and doing that, I think anyone that will listen will say, like, that is a real classy touch. And there's not many footballers I've ever spoken to that have talked about the sharing of their career. And I appreciate you're talking about it from a point of view of you and your close friends, but your willingness to share that with the wider audience and really bring people into your world is what makes you so very special, mate, at our football club, and why you have got such legacy, which kind of leads me on to the last point that I had for you, really, Sam, which is now, obviously, you're 40 years old. You've got a burgeoning media career. It's you're every day I seem to sort of look and wonder what Sam's doing now, and I find out now you're on Chelsea TV, and it's rapidly expanding, and all credit to you, mate. But how important as as a club, and we'll make no bones about it, you are a Swindon Town legend. How important is that legacy when you reflect on your life in general, Sam, as a human being? How important is that to you? Does that pop up in your mind every day? Does it? Is it something that just comes in left field? Like what does that make you feel? To feel that you've achieved that and protected it, and you've managed to maintain it. What does that actually feel like? Now you're just a chap. You know what does that mean to you?
Um, well, probably the thing that not keeps me going, but the thing that when I think back over the regret over some decisions in football, and I spoke of the disappointment that I didn't achieve, probably what I set out to. It's the one thing that you know makes it all worthwhile, really. And the thing, there's it's not shame. It's not I'm not ashamed of some of the seasons I had, or the lack of good performances that subsequently came. But it's just like a period that nobody can take away, really, and the period I'll be most proud about telling my children about, when they're older. And it's 3 years where I gave my best in all on all fronts, with the football, but also in the things I did in the community, and the thing that's given me those lasting relationships now. So I think I always say it's very, knowing what I do now, and I've got a lot more life to live, but knowing what I do now, it's very rare to have a place. I've got nothing negative to say about Swindon as a place either. I love going down there. Kind of get a different, I had a different feeling when I turn off that junction of the motorway as I do to every other, because it's associated with such a great time. And obviously I've had a period doing some media work down there as well. So I've got, friends in other walks of life down there, not just the football bubble as well now. So it's it's a place that will always be a part of my life now, because I'm looking forward to the day I bring my children. They get to meet some of these people we've spoken of tonight, and some of the people that are very dear friends of mine. So yeah, it's just immensely proud, and something that I've got, Mark, that I suppose the thing you have to keep telling yourself, something that the majority of players will never have. Will never have that feeling, that emotional attachment, which is from supporter to player and vice versa, that I've got with Swindon. So it's very unique, and something that will obviously be forever. So it's a wonderful thing.
Sam, I'll tell you, it is wonderful. Now, you've just got to make us one promise. About 2 weeks ago, we had Tom Broadbent on the show, and Tom took us through a very different type of legend status that he's achieved through a just one particular magical night up the A420, which you'll be well aware of. Now, a couple of days later, Tom agreed to meet me at the County Ground Hotel, because Tom said something to me that I was really melancholy about. He said that the whole who put the ball in the Oxford nets, Super Tommy Broadbent, he's one of his biggest regrets from his time at Swindon. He speaks really fondly of it, was that he never got to hear it sung in the ground because of the nature of COVID and lockdown. And 2 days later, we had him in the County Ground Hotel, and the entire pub was roaring that at him. And it's interesting, he brought a bunch of his Eastleigh teammates down with him. And yeah, there wasn't a beer bought on their side of the bar. I don't know how they got home. I know they got home in one piece because he played the following week. But it was quite something. And Sam, I'll tell you what, I don't think there's a listener on the show at the moment that wouldn't love to be in the County Ground hearing your song being belted out, and it wouldn't be the last time. But I would love to buy you a beer, as I'm sure half of these people would, and join in with a raucous round of your old song, mate. So you're gonna have to take us up on that.
That'd be great. I don't actually remember if I got a beer that last after that last game. It's a little bit blurry, to be honest. I don't remember exactly what happened. I think it was quite overwhelming for my mate. But yeah, I don't think I had a beer in there. So that would be great. I'd love to come as a supporter. It's obviously at the moment I'm full on with being a new father, which is taking up the majority of my time, and trying to find the hours to do some work is very challenging. But I'm constantly having to turn my brother down his requests to go to football matches with him, saying I literally cannot go to a game on a social at the moment. I'm just not allowed. I'm only allowed out of these four walls to go and earn some money at games. But yeah, as soon as I'm able to go and watch games as a supporter again, that'd be amazing.
Well, mate, listen, one dad to another new dad. Your kid's a very, very lucky individual to have a father of your ilk, mate. And I'm sure they're going to grow up, if they've got your values instilled in them, fella, they're going to grow up to be a splendid, all-rounded human being. I was just going to open up to Nick and Tyler and ask if there's anything either of you guys want to ask Sam or say to Sam before we wrap up. Fire away, guys. Now's the time.
Sam, one thing that always stuck with me when you were at Swindon, and we've talked about it many times since, is how you always felt you never sort of really fitted in with the sort of dressing room sort of lads banter. That's always stuck with me, because you kind of always assume that all footballers are sort of very similar and they love all that kind of stuff. But I always got the feeling that you didn't really.
Yeah, I don't know. I found that I could be quite flexible. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that's the right word. Adaptable. You know, I could get on with all the lads from all different walks of life. It wouldn't mean that I'd be best mates with them all. And I think, you know, I've spoken a lot about my mates from home and stuff like that, which were huge fans of, you know, huge champions of my football career in terms of travel up and down the country. You know, there wasn't a week at Swindon where they weren't there, but I think that's quite unique in the football world. And I think when I came to Swindon and obviously found a home for myself and got to know the players really well, I quickly realised that was unique. You know, a lot of the lads have been in the youth team and away from their mates and their families very early on. And because I was at Chelsea down the road, you know, my friends and my family were such a permanent fixture from very early on, and it remained that way. So I don't know. I think it just goes back to, you know, the values from my mum. You know, my childhood friends from school and from around where I lived are my friends for life. And yes, of course, I've got great friends from football. You know, someone like Johnny Jackson, who, you know, I'm friends with from our time at Swindon. You know, still 20 years on. To just throw out a name, but yeah, it was, you know, the football dressing room again. I you know, been in there 10 minutes, you've heard every joke that you're going to hear for the next 20 years. You know, it's not something that I miss really, being around the lads. But of course, I had great friends. I just found that I could get on with everyone. But I was always more comfortable, you know, being with my friends that I'd grown up with, I suppose.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, that high that you must have, though, of hearing your name and scoring the goals on a Saturday, that must be obviously very difficult to replicate as your career comes to an end. But obviously, you still work in the game. I mean, do you still get a similar kind of buzz when you're sort of going to games and working on them and doing your sort of co-coms and stuff like that? Do you still get the same sort of feeling about the game, but in a different way?
Yeah, it's different, 100%. I mean, like, in terms of the tension and stuff, the TV work, the live TV work, obviously Quest and, you know, the odd pitch side game for Sky and stuff like that. You get it. It's more, you know, nerves, a little bit of adrenaline, so it's different. And then I think, yeah, like, if you're in a packed stadium, you know, doing a big game, and the game's really free flowing and there's a good atmosphere, you get a little bit of a buzz. And I think if you perform well, like, you feel like you've done a good job, like, on the way home, there's still a little bit of that adrenaline, you know, similar to what I'd have driving away from Swindon on the M4 after a game, you know, where you have to get home and, you know, probably now it's a glass of wine or whatever. Back in the day, I probably would have lay on the sofa and watched a film till the very early hours, or a box set and had a McDonald's or something. Now it's kind of back and unwind with a glass of wine and a bit of satisfaction that you've done a night's work. But yeah, there's similarities, but it's different. I think the physical element as well, when you're playing football, there's almost like a satisfaction that night and the next day when you can feel that your muscles have worked hard. You know, I'm speaking to Grant Smith about it. I remember Grant saying to me when his career wound up, and saying he missed that feeling the day after a game where you're a bit dehydrated and you know, your muscles feel quite tense, and you've got, you know, probably got a few kicks and a few cuts and a few bruises. And he said, "Oh, it's weird looking down at my legs and not seeing those cuts and the bruising and stuff like that." And I think as a footballer, that those things are the things that are part and parcel of your day-to-day job, really, for a number of years. And when it's gone, you miss it.
Absolutely. You know what, Sam? I only probably play 1 or 2 games a year now, mate, and it's usually bizarrely on the county ground pitch at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I can relate, but only from a point, like, as a keeper, I really miss scabby knees. Like, I kind of get what you're coming from. It's a constant reminder to me that actually it's very, very rare now that I pull the gloves on. I really miss that full body workout that 90 minutes at any level will give you as a 44-year-old chap now. I do look at my knees, they're always intact, whereas it was a reminder that for 90 minutes on a Sunday I was absolutely alive, and yeah, it's so. But I mean, to add that with the adulation of fans singing your name, the ball hitting the back of the net, being able to sit back, see yourself on telly, reflect on the impact that you've had on a town with the best part of 250,000 people living there, people knowing who you are. I mean, the mind, mate. Honestly, the mind boggles. Tyler, I'm absolutely disgusted that you haven't got a single question from Debs for Sam, given how Debs was so enthused about Sam coming on the show tonight. Surely she's asked you to ask Sam at least one thing tonight.
No, not a thing, mate. Not a thing. The only thing I've got to say,
she's been so coy.
Only thing I've got to say really is that I'm gutted I didn't actually get to see him play.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely, Tyler, Sam, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Tyler's very well aware of the legacy that you've left, and it's fair to say, Tyler, the closest that in your supporting sort of history, well, probably 2 names that I think of would probably be Charlie Austin and Owen Doyle have come anywhere near close to what Sam achieved for our football club. And it's interesting because whilst I have an awful lot of time for both of those lads on and off the pitch, you would, if you asked fans to pick, you could have one or t'other, an Owen Doyle or Sam, or a Charlie Austin or Sam in your lineup. I think very, very few people are going to opt for anyone other than Sam. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I'd probably agree.
Yeah, Sam, that must not be funny, mate, but that must fill you full of bubbles when you think of the sort of the players we just sort of like put you up against. Both those guys pretty much household names, depending on maybe lesser so Doyler, but certainly Charlie. That must fill you full of enormous pride.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, yeah, it's circumstantial a little bit because I'm sure if Charlie would have hung around a little bit longer, he probably would have blown my kind of goals out the window. But I know, he left in not the best possible terms. But I know Charlie a little bit, and one of the most natural goal scorers that I've seen, probably, in the, all through the levels, really incredible goal scorer. So who knows? He may do a year at Swindon before he packs in. Who knows? He's very loved at QPR. I think he's made that kind of his second home, or his home, really, football terms. And Doyle, I think, he's a great example of someone who's really prospered under certain managers. And you look, Richie Wellens built that whole team for him to prosper, and he did do so. He's someone that probably needs a bit of an arm around him, really, and Richie certainly had that touch. But yeah, I mean, that was great for me to be covering that season because that was just poetry, wasn't it? He was exceptional. But yeah, to be in a conversation with all these guys is always very flattering. And if I come out on top, all the better.
Well, like I said, mate, I'm full of superlatives for you, and I promise you, it's not just because you're on, mate, and it's not just because you and I've been lucky enough to meet you several times over the years. You've always been very gracious with me, very gracious with my family. But I can guarantee you, there's not a Swindon Town fan that has a bad word to say about you. And I think we've covered off everything I wanted to in terms of how you've gone about I think we've really explored how you've gone about attaining that status, mate, and protecting it and how cherished it is. I think you touched on, it's not to be disparaging towards Charlie in any way, shape or form, but I think that the big difference is the way that you managed your departure from Swindon Town and the way that you have continued to kind of like maintain your links to the town. And mate, even it's not lost on me that even agreeing to come on tonight and speak to me and let all these people that have come on tonight listen to you. I know it's all part of, you know, looking after that relationship, mate. And I mean, I'm incredibly grateful you've come on. And I'm sure everyone's incredibly grateful that you've given us quite an extended period of your time, mate. An hour and a half in your busy schedule, particularly with a nipper, is not to be sniffed at. Sam, thank you, mate. Seriously, and I hope I see plenty more of you moving forward. You know, both at the county ground and hopefully away from the pitch. Do take me up on that offer of a beer, and we'll give you a we'll give you a good afternoon down the county ground when you can get a day pass and sort the babysitting duties out. But like I said, mate, I couldn't say thank you enough. So. Sam Parkin, ladies and gentlemen, what an absolute ledge. Sam, we'll let you go, mate. I'll tell you why, because we're about to have half an hour or so talking about the Crawley game. So you don't want to be around for that.
No worries, Mark. Good to speak to you and Tyler and Juddy, and keep supporting the team. And see you for a beer, definitely. I'd love to come to a game as a supporter and get stuck into a few drinks and, you know, sing some of the other lads' names.
You're a top man, Sam. I will be in touch, mate. I promise you.
All right, guys. See you soon. Cheers.
Take good care, buddy.
Cheers.
Bye now. Wow. Gents, how'd you follow that up? That's